what's he wearing? He's wearing a congregation.
Look, it's the Prophecy Brothers.
Welcome to the Prophecy Brothers. I'm Brother Man with Brother Champion.
Welcome.
Good evening. Is there a secret organization that steers our elections, foreign policy, and economy? Could this organization have shaped history as we know it? Our guest tonight, investigator and author Johnny Cirucci, will tell us. He's written a couple books on the subject. One, The Illuminati Unmasked, Everything You Need to Know About the New World Order and How We Will Beat It. And his latest book, Secret History, The Erased Clues That Prove Who Rules the World from Behind the Curtain. He also has a podcast on Blog Talk Radio called Resistance Rising. Welcome to the Prophecy Brothers, Johnny Cirucci.
Welcome.
Thanks, Champion. Appreciate it. Really pleased to be here. And you guys are legit. You know, normally I have somebody set me up and say, okay, yeah, give me your body. You already did your own research. Really impressive work. I'm very excited to be here.
Well,
yeah, we got your book. We haven't had a chance to read it yet, though. It just came in, but we will.
I just want to...
Yeah, there's a couple of pages there. It's you know, some people have called it a tome, and I don't blame them.
Well, yeah, about 800 pages, and I just flipped through here a little bit, but well, basically, I'll give a little bit of my background with the Illuminati research. Well, I was born again in 2003, but I was almost born again in 1992, and but I let the devil, just trick me out of that. That was that situation where I was believing in God, and but in the late 90s, one of the close friends of ours basically joined an Illuminati group, and it's one of the ones you have mentioned in your book here, but I won't go into details because try to avoid backlash, retaliation, but. Basically, he tried to get a group of his friends that were, basically, I wasn't really close friends with them, but he was trying to recruit, a group of us, and basically, I said, he presented something that was like scientific, this is just like ESP, and there's no devil worshiping here, and I got to see a couple of the things that they're doing. A couple of rituals where he's speaking in a Enochian language, and there was basically I had a vision, like a manifestation. From this thing. So this stuff's real. There's supernatural stuff involved there, but it's evil, and that was the late '90s. So 2003, I was saved. But since then, I've been looking at information. Read all kinds of books. Before the interview here, we're talking about some of the Chick Track, books there that they have about the former Jesuits, which is basically, you're going to talk about how the Jesuits and Illuminati are connected, or Illuminati came from the Jesuits. Got a lot of videos like from Kristen J. Pinto explains a lot about the Illuminati. I got a pile of books here, videos that So basically, for almost 20 years, I've been, looking into this, and I've been training in ministry. Basically, a lot of people, they heard about this stuff, but they just don't believe that it's infiltrated, everywhere. I mean, but the devil's our main enemy, but he's working through these people.
And believe me, he does carry this stuff around with him. He does. His trunk is full of these books and everything. But Johnny, could you tell us about yourself? How you, I guess, how you became awake, how your eyes were open. Tell us about your story, and then maybe what we'll do is we'll just ask some questions along the way. But we're going to let you do a majority of the talking. You can educate our audience and your research, and also us.
Sure thing, yeah. And first of all, Champion Joe, you have an impressive testimony. Clearly the Lord had to plant some seeds in you and let them percolate before bringing you around. Right. And that's awesome that you were rescued from that kind of a background. Very, very dangerous. It's very appealing. A lot of those secret societies and secret groups are gatekeepers of power. And no, I take that back, guys. They all are. Every secret society is a gatekeeper of power, and they're built in degrees. They're built in steps designed to increase your loyalty with each step with whatever more evil act that you can commit. It shows that you really are committed to the agenda. So it's, again, I think it's safe to say we're all here miraculously by the hand of Christ, and so we should carry that with humility. But as far as what brought me around, fourth generation Italian Roman Catholic immigrants there, and we family was very, very pleased. It's unlike the system that we have today, where puppets of Rome continue to keep our borders wide open generation after generation, encouraging particularly south of the border as many illegal immigrants as possible, because most of them have been raised in a hard left Roman Catholic culture. And so it's a concept as old as warfare. As a matter of fact, it's been used in warfare many times. It's to supplant or infuse one population with another. And that's how Donald Trump, who was Jesuit trained 2 years before him, by the way, managed to get in office is by tapping into American anger over how generation after generation have been subjected to this treason, this treasonous agenda. It's not the immigrants' fault, and it's not about race, but it is about culture, and it is absolutely about religion. So unlike us, and I have to say that I've seen my research has shown that the waves of Irish and Italian immigrants, particularly in the 30s and beyond, before in the 1800s as well, were also papal agendas to flood America with as many Roman Catholics as possible. Now the problem there was assimilation. So my family came to this country, and there was a pretty hard standard of assimilation. You learn the culture, you learn the history, you learn the language, or you didn't eat. Mm-hmm. And so that is not. They got around that today with a hard left socialist, almost communist agenda as far as government benefits. So you can arrive. You don't have to assimilate. I live in South Central Pennsylvania, and I have a community that was so full of Spanish-speaking Roman Catholic immigrants. I watched one of my local law enforcement officers pull a Spanish-English dictionary out of his back pocket before knocking on the door of a local apartment. It really is. It's treason. It's treason. But back to me and my background is my family assimilated. They had no choice, and I'm very, very excited and pleased that they did, because they became American. I love to speak Italian. Maybe I'll try to learn it someday, but it's gone. It's long gone, because we had to as part of coming to the country and having a second chance. It was why my family got here, and as a result of that, they instilled on each of our generations great love for the country and thankfulness and humility, and that encouraged me to go into the military. And so I wasn't really directed. I kind of bounced around, did time in the Marine Corps as an enlisted man, and I did time. Then I got out completely and came back in the Army as an officer. and then got out and went into the National Guard, and actually found some full-time positions in the National Guard. So very, very passionate, patriotic background. And of course, in 1994, while I was still in college, actually I had gone back to college. And on that second trip to college to finish what I started was when I had that life-changing experience at Calvary Chapel in Albuquerque and became born again on January 16, 1994. So those two things in the background made me, I don't like to use the word conservative, guys, because it implies stuck in the mud, unable to think freely. Right-minded values is what very specific I like to say. And so, and of course with born-again Christian, so this set sowed the seeds for me being angry and frustrated with the culture in the country, with media in the culture, with entertainment in the country. Everywhere I turned around, somebody was beating me down, particularly in college. And so I learned in college. I did some writing for the university newspaper. I learned in college, don't open my mouth unless I can absolutely prove it. And that's one of the reasons why the first book is 862 pages and 2,000 citations. Because I expect people to say, you're a nutter, you're crazy, you're a conspiracy, you're a tinfoil hat word. No, what I did is that, and really both books are just compilations of somebody else's quotes. So, and I hope that I use them in ways to direct you to my point. So, learned that in college, and in my time in the military, got hooked in, got connected to quote-unquote conservative media, which was kind of alternative media. Mainstream media. This was before Fox News. Rupert Murdoch, who was a Knight of Malta, by the way, came on the scene. So all of the mainstream news media had a leftist bent, and so I listened to the right-wing commentators, talking heads, Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, all those guys that were quote-unquote alternative.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but still very much mainstream. And they just kind of had the same message over and over again. And I'll be honest with you, I started to have my concerns even before I woke up. The way Mark Levin would handle, you mentioned Ron Paul, the way Mark Levin would handle Ron Paul supporters, particularly people that questioned the Federal Reserve. I remember very distinctly one call where I was listening to his program. Somebody had called in and tried to question the role of the Federal Reserve as a Ron Paul supporter, and Levin just savaged him. No pun intended for Michael Savage. Savaged him and beat up, and he was like, "Oh wow, come on, man! Why are you being so divisive? That's not necessary." So that kind of started me to question mainstream alternative / conservative talking heads. But it wasn't until the advent of the Obama administration that clearly Barack Obama was a guy that just was fabricated, that he was just created on his own, not on his own, rather. He was just, the guy has 3 known aliases, and his social security number has been traced to a dead guy in Connecticut, a state that he's never even lived in.
Yeah, Johnny, I just want to point out there. Okay, well, basically, when they in 2008, when Barack Obama was campaigning, immediately I noticed, okay, Obama is real similar to Osama. Why don't people notice this? All right, so you have Osama bin Laden, then you have Obama Biden. I mean, okay, well, I thought I'd throw that in there.
Of course, you couldn't mention that, though, could you? You get in trouble like that. It was Cunningham that was the radio guy. Remember, he got kicked out of the McCain. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and as a matter of fact, that incident where John McCain excoriated him just kind of proved to me that McCain wasn't interested in winning when he beat up his own supporter for mentioning Barack Obama's middle name and accenting Barack Obama's middle name. And I'm sure there's something to that. I remember pretty funny that Teddy Kennedy was talking about Barack Obama and said Osama instead, and it was a frequent mistake. There's definitely some weird stuff going on there. But most importantly it's clear that the guy has a weird background. I've got in my files, I think it's a New York Times article on the campaign in 2008 where he was trying to one-up his opponents, both John McCain and Hillary Clinton, in regards to his foreign policy credibility. And he bragged about he went off teleprompter, which is another very serious sign that he's a controlled individual. He's a puppet.
Yeah.
Went off teleprompter and talked about his time in the 80s in Pakistan. Hang on.
Yeah.
80s in Pakistan? Wait a minute. That was illegal. No regular American citizen was able to travel back and forth Pakistan, Afghanistan. It was a war zone, and it continues to be a very problematic area. And he mentioned in the article how, oh yeah, you just go onto the CIA way station, you sign in, and you're good to go. So clearly he gave himself up as being very deep in the intelligence agenda, and so some researchers have wondered whether or not he was being used as a drug mule back in the 80s. There has been guys like Wayne Madsen, and I don't vouch for any one of these personalities, but I do appreciate the research Wayne Madsen has done on the Obama's family and their CIA roots. That there's been some implication there. I don't doubt it for a minute. His mother, his grandmother, all involved in CIA front operations. His mother was one of the first banking officials there in Hawaii. His mother apparently was working for the CIA in Indonesia. So clearly the guy has been created and fabricated. And what helped to really wake me up is how none of the right-wing talking heads would hit him hard.
Yeah.
No one really questioned his background. No one would question, and as far as the birth certificate thing goes, I'm convinced that was more of a distraction than anything else. What it was meant to distract from is, I'm convinced, his Chicago roots, where he was trained by a Jesuit priest by the name of Greg Galuzzo on how to be a community organizer. So it's neither here nor there. One thing I will say is that the purveyors in our community of Christian alternative media who have been pushing the birth certificate really disappointed me. They have strung people out over all 8 years without showing. I like to play this on my podcast. The clip from was it Jerry Maguire? Show me the money. Show me the money, and then the clip from the old hamburger commercial. Where's the beef? What is the substance of this birth certificate issue? None. Zero. There's no substance. And everyone in our community who has strung us out saying, oh, we're going to get them now. Oh, we're going to get them. And nothing ever happens as a result of it. That shows me that there's a smokescreen, that their job was to throw dirt in our eyes, and I don't appreciate it. So back to conservative talk media not hitting Barack Obama on his mysterious past. What sealed it for me was the Osama bin Laden raid in 2011. I happened to still be in the military at the time, and I had inside sources that told me immediately that story was not what we were told, and it made no sense anyway. Here you take the most valuable asset in the so-called war on terror, and you shoot them on sight and dump them in the ocean.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you've got guys like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, KSM, who were captured and waterboarded like 180 times. Are you kidding me? In order to get every scrap of information from this guy. Unbelievable. And the most important intelligence asset of the entire war, you shoot him on sight and dump him in the ocean. You don't even use the opportunity to parade him around as the victory. Why? No, because, and I later realized and later found out, the war on terror is never meant to end. That's why it's a war on terror. It's not supposed to end.
Right. Yeah, remember McCain says it could go 100 years. And he campaigned on that, I think, didn't he?
Or we could have Leon Panetta, Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic, former Secretary of War, what we call Secretary of Defense, former Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, calling it the next 30 years war. And nobody knows that flew over everybody's head because nobody realizes the 30 Years' War was one of the first Protestant Catholic wars back in the Middle Ages.
Oh.
So a Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic knows it, and it was sending signals to other Jesuit-trained Roman Catholics, but nobody else caught that when he made that reference to the War on Terror. It's the next 30 years' war.
Sure.
And that's something else that helped to wake me up. So, concerned that I was being sold a bill of goods, even by the right-wing talking heads, I began to dig deeper. Came across a guy that I'm now convinced is an agent for the Jesuits, who was giving names of places and dates on who is really behind, who's at the top of the pyramid. And he was tracing all of his names, places, and dates back to the Vatican and back to the order known as the Jesuits, the society of so-called Society of Jesus, founded by Ignatius Loyola in 1534. And so I started taking notes and verifying it, and I'll be darned, I mean, everything this guy said. There was some stuff that he left out, but what he would talk about, for instance, that the Jesuits were implicated and intimately involved in not just the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, but also the Civil War, that they were intimately involved in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. They were intimately involved in the Vietnam War. As a matter of fact, it was they were so involved that where was Spelman? I guess Spelman was Archdiocese of New York. That it was called Spelly's War after Cardinal Spellman because he was so intimately involved in the Vietnam War. Vietnam War is another excellent example of a war that was never meant to end because it was designed to punish us Protestants and make lots of money and punish the heretic Vietnamese, as the church calls them. So I was shocked at this revelation. So I had my first quote-unquote red pill was to walk away from conservative media, and my second quote-unquote red pill was to come to the realization that there are what I call Jesuit breadcrumbs that lead to just about every single major event, particularly the bad ones in American history. And I came up with a formula that has borne fruit for me every single time in regards to tracing popular personalities. Now, when I mention these, I want to make a strong distinction. There are like anywhere from 1.2 billion to 2 billion Catholics around the world. We're not talking about all Roman Catholics. We're talking about Catholic leadership. We're talking about historical Rome. And we're talking about how Catholic leadership taps into loyalty amongst Roman Catholics and exploits it and gets them to commit treason. Not all Roman Catholics are traitors, but all Roman Catholics in key positions of power are. And so, as a result of that, the Catholic Church preys upon them, and exploits their loyalty to Rome and to get them to do things they would not normally do. So I came up with this formula of, is the person a Roman Catholic? Did the person grow up in a Catholic household? Did the person have a Catholic education? Did the person have a Jesuit education? Is the person married to a Roman Catholic? Is the person a member of a Catholic secret society or well-known society? Knight of Malta, Opus Dei, Knight of Columbus. And then outside of that, I've later learned that the Catholic Church the Jesuits control these organizations anyway, Freemasons, and supposedly non-Catholic organizations like Skull and Bones, which are unfortunately quite Catholic. A great example is William F. Buckley, John Forbes Carey, both devout Roman Catholics, Yale, Skull and Bones, CIA guys. So that's everybody. That's everybody in power. And outside of that is a tiny handful of people on the side that are kept in place by blackmail. But when I realized that those, what I call the Jesuit breadcrumbs, bore out everybody, and for instance, oh my goodness, so, I like to give as the example, and if anybody's heard me before, you know I like to give this example as the speakers of the House. In 2010, the Speaker of the House was Nancy Pelosi, hard left Italian Roman Catholic, hard left. She was mentored by a Jesuit named Stephen J. Privet, who was the president of San Francisco University. She turned the gavel over to John Boehner, who is a Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic. He was trained at Xavier, and actually also had his high school was at Marianist. Oh my goodness, it'll come back. I have to pull it up real quick. Molinar, where's his high school? Anyway, devout Roman Catholic, Jesuit trained in college. That's why when she turned the gavel over to him, he gave a big fat kiss. He's ever seen that picture of John Boehner giving Nancy Pelosi a big kiss. And so, how much has changed between this Nancy Pelosi and John Boehner, policy-wise, particularly for the House?
Yeah, a couple questions, Johnny. One, when you're talking about these people, what do you make of? Didn't Newt Gingrich become Catholic a few years back?
I don't know about his conversion. I know he had an audience with the Pope. In fact, I want to say I have a picture of Newt Gingrich with an audience with the Pope, with a Benny Hinn. I swear, I'm pretty sure that I can pull up a picture of Newt Gingrich and Benny Hinn sitting almost side by side in an audience before the Pope. So,
well, I remember, I think, it was 2005 when Pope John Paul died, I think it was, and Benny Hinn was on TV, went to the Vatican, and he's filming that like, here's a man of God that just passed, but I don't believe that, but so it seems like either he's he's still influenced by Catholics, or he's just like completely unaware that but what kind of I guess what kind of background you have on Benny Hinn?
Well, I'll tell you, pretty surprising. He's got a surprising friend named John Hagee. I don't know if you are familiar with John Hagee being very tight with Benny Hinn. You wouldn't expect that because John Hagee has these impeccable credentials as a Christian preacher. But I know that although I may not have Jesuit breadcrumbs outside of Benny Hinn's audience with the Pope, I think that's really all you need, is to see that someone has dramatically harmed. Anytime that you see someone harming the Christian image, there is an excellent chance that at the very least they're on the Roman payroll, because that's the goal, is to harm the Christian image, particularly the image of Bible-believing Christians. I've done several reports on who really owns Hollywood, and ever since the Templars were suppressed in 1307, the papal powers, the Roman powers, realized that they could never again have their own names and faces be disclosed behind their machinations. And so they needed patsies to hide behind, and ever since 1307, they've been hiding behind Jews. So they will never make a move unless they first elevate a Jew to a prominent position and allow people's emotions and racism to get them to disconnect their brains, and then bolster it with names and faces, Rothschilds and Soros and all these other key figures that they have given us, Mark Zuckerberg and all these guys in key positions that they have placed there as patsies and puppets. Larry Silverstein, the real estate guy that owned the World Trade Center. They gave him the World Trade Center like 4 months before 9/11.
Yeah, that was Building 7, wasn't it? And he had it insured. Was it Building 7 that he owned?
My understanding is he owned the entire complex.
Oh, okay.
They got him the entire complex right before 9/11, so that when it went down, they had a Jew holding the bag, and then they could start controversy over him trying to cash in on insurance and so forth. And the bottom line is they get prospective truth seekers to focus and fixate on the fact that he's Jewish, and it really is the papacy behind him. So, and my point there was that how many movies? When was the last time that you saw a movie portraying a non-Catholic Christian, particularly a Protestant Christian man, who is a disciplined moral hero? Never. Right. I don't know anyone. Now, they may have tapped into a little bit with this remake of Ben-Hur, but that still doesn't really qualify. We're talking about a modern Protestant, disciplined moral man. There's no such thing, and in fact, any movie that touches upon the Christian religion usually mocks Christian men, turns them into psychos and killers. I like the Marvel Comics stuff that has been turned on Netflix and movies and so forth, and I watched Luke Cage there on Netflix, and Cage's half-brother doesn't make a move unless he quotes scripture, and he's the psycho killer bad guy that kills without even a thought. And he is a devout Christian Baptist whose father birthed one or two of them as a result of an adulterous affair with his secretary, Baptist preacher. That's absolutely typical from what we get from entertainment.
Right.
Well,
let me ask you this, because when you're talking that the Jesuits and there's some Catholic hierarchy, and we know it's not the typical Catholics. I mean, I'm sure you still have family and friends that are Catholic. We do too. And we were once, and we weren't part of this. And
we're praying for him.
Yeah, we were praying for him. We would have been appalled of this. But a lot of these institutions that they do control, and the message that they get out, and the leaders like Pelosi and everything, they, especially, I'll use Pelosi as an example, and then also Notre Dame here, which we're just a few miles away from. They'll do something, they're supposed to be devout Catholics, but they'll do something that is contrary to church teaching. Like, of course, Nancy Pelosi is in the Democratic Party, it's all for abortion, a lot of other things. Here at Notre Dame, we had Barack Obama come in as a speaker, and if you haven't seen Father Jenkins' facial expressions as he's looking at Barack Obama give a speech, I don't know if you've ever seen that speech that Obama gave at Notre Dame commencement. It's a really strange look that Father Jenkins has on that's all I'm going to say, when he's looking at Barack Obama. But what I'm saying is that a lot of these organizations that they are controlling, their people are going against Catholic teachings. So why would they do that? Why would they get in the film industry? Why would they promote abortion? Or does the church really not believe in that?
It probably goes back to their oath.
I think, yeah, and the Jesuit oath, and that's exactly a great point. Good for you, Joe. Excellent point, because in the fourth vow, the Jesuit blood oath, it says that you're going to create strife with two Jesuits on either side of the argument. At the very top, they absolutely do not believe in the sanctity of life. That's why Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, a great many other hard left politicians that are Roman Catholic are just as easily accepted as the phony right-wing politicians who never deliver on their ideals and their ideology. They're just there for show. At the very top, it's the Hegelian dialectic. All they care about is playing us, one group against the other. And so for good, right-minded Roman Catholics, my message is you have been and are being played. You will continue to be played. There is no intent by your leadership, and let me tell you something, there have been some hard left messages coming in from this Jesuit Pope right now. Whether it's the sanctity of life or marriage or the redistribution of wealth, it always seems like when the Catholic Church gets involved with the redistribution of wealth, the wealth that gets redistributed is from the hardworking middle class, and the very, very powerful rich elite never get touched, which is the expectation of the silly kids on Occupy Wall Street, God love them, I'll be honest with you. I am very, very right-wing in my ideology, but I have no problem with redistributing the wealth of these billionaires at the the 0.0001%. I have no problem with that because they are the ultimate thieves and criminals at the very top. They play us amongst ourselves. And really, when it comes down to, like I just said, wealth redistribution, the only people that can't have their wealth redistributed are the hard-working producers of the middle class. So it's all about the Hegelian dialectic, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, to get good people to go in a direction they would not normally go. So you want proud, independent Americans in the American experiment who own property and defend it with a firearm, something that has never been experienced in the history of human feudalism. You want to get those proud, independent Americans to give up their guns and give up even their rights to private property. Well, the best thing you can do is scare them, is produce threats and tell them that unless they willingly stick their head into the stocks and allow themselves to become enslaved, that they'll live the rest of their lives in fear. And that's the vast majority. Unfortunately, I don't think very much of any one of these mass shootings we've been seeing in the past several years. I am absolutely convinced that they've been engineered one way, shape, or form. At the bare minimum, we had this guy in OSU who was brought into the country by Catholic Charities. Right. All you need, if you have constantly the borders being wide open is treason enough. You have so many people walking across the border, of course you're going to get a crazy every once in a while. You feed that crazy, you put them next to an FBI agent that gets him to do something crazy, and then all of a sudden you don't even have to have one of your own guys do something. You don't even have to do your own false flag. You just wait for this crazy to hatch, and boom, there you've got your criminal issue. You've got the next AR-15 crime that requires you to go in and start collecting up guns and disarming the American people. And that's been going on for generations now. So it's all about the Hegelian dialectic. To bring it back to your original question, Matt, is good Catholics, you're being played, and you're never going to win. You're never going to see your right-minded values come to fruition, and the leadership in your church is the one that are the ones that are going to make sure that never happens.
Well, I'm in complete agreement with what you're saying there, but just talk about the these Catholic Charities groups. They had the list on the internet there where they're bringing in all these refugees, or basically it's just a Muslim army into the United States. But these places that they're going to, most of them are the Catholic charities organizations, and why would the would it be set up like that? We got the first Jesuit Pope. They basically were set up as a counter-Reformation organization. Get rid of all Protestants. Set the world up for make everybody obedient to the Pope. Make everybody Catholic. So I see this as this is a plan. I mean, it seems like it's a plan by the Jesuit Pope, or the Vatican, just to bring in people to the United States that would take down the United States. The last we have basically the last army that's protecting Protestants. I mean, so we're enemy number one basically to the Pope as a country. Protecting born-again Christians, Protestants. The border that they're leaving open is between Mexico, predominantly Catholic country, but we also have all these Muslims coming in there.
We don't know who's coming in. I think even Chinese were coming in.
But to me, it just seems like, okay, well, if this Pope's the false prophet, or the office of Pope, Vicar of Christ is could be translated as Antichrist. There are many Antichrists. I mean, to me, it's just obvious that they would want to destroy the United States, get rid of the born again Christian Protestant opposition to their control.
Well, isn't that really what it is, Johnny? Is it about giving up U.S. sovereignty, and is it the world government? Is that what the end? What is the end goal? I guess. What are they actually?
My goodness, there's so much information that Joe that you mentioned there, and Matt, that's really is an excellent point. The end goal is unification and feudalism. The end goal is one religion under Rome, one power under Rome, and the destruction of Protestantism. Unfortunately, Joe, the military doesn't work for us, and maybe never has. One of the reasons why I got out is that I came to the realization that not only are military policies self-destructive, but every single place that the United States military has gone, the lives of Christians have gotten remarkably worse. Iraq, Afghanistan,
right, recently,
Libya, Syria.
Overthrow all these countries, give them over to the Muslims that are killing and crucifying Christians, torturing them, and
that's exactly what happened.
Why did that happen?
That's because the United States military is owned and run by Roman Catholic traitors. The Martin Dempsey, the former Army Chief of Staff, self-described Irish Roman Catholic. Joseph Dunford is the current Chief of Staff at the Pentagon. United States Marine Corps, Irish Roman Catholic, Jesuit trained at Georgetown. I don't trust anybody at a general pay grade because they clearly have been screened out in order to follow the agenda. They're not going to get promoted unless they're guaranteed to follow the agenda. And the agenda is one of treason. The integration, the complete integration of women has only one purpose. That's to destroy the cohesion of the United States military, to set the military up for another Vietnam-level meat grinder, and to start it, to make it happen. Ukraine or along the border of Russia, any place that's unnecessary, somewhere in Africa. But you're absolutely right, Joe, that they took stable governments throughout the Middle East and Africa and overturned them, which was absolutely against the best interests of the American people. It was against the best interests of the people of those nations. I was there in Iraq. 10 years after the war started, they still had no infrastructure. It was still an absolute shocking, sickening third world mess. And the policies still, to that day, 10 years after the war began, were far more counterproductive, made far more enemies than it did friends. And that was another thing that woke me up to the Jesuit world order. Why is it that America's own institutions seem to be her worst enemies? That the CIA and FBI do damage far worse than any outside enemy we've ever been subjected to. I recommend to people to watch Oliver Stone's JFK. It was in 91 or something, for no other reason than because it basically is a dramatized documentary which shows that Lee Harvey Oswald did not kill Kennedy, and that the power that killed Kennedy had to be just that, extremely powerful, the ability to manipulate security, Secret Service, change the route of Kennedy to include that elbow there on Elm right before the triangulation in the kill zone. Even the Zapruder film, which had to be subpoenaed by Jim Garrison, shows, whether it was doctored or not, clearly shows that the shot that eventually killed John F. Kennedy came from the front and knocked his head back into the left. Clearly, you did not have a guy with a Mannlicher Carcano 6.5 bolt action from World War I of 200 yards away, cranking off 3 shots in like 6.8 seconds or some ridiculous feat that no one has been able to duplicate since then. So if Lee Oswald didn't murder John F. Kennedy, and the chances are good that the CIA did, are you kidding me? How is the Central Intelligence Agency slaughtering a sitting president in broad daylight? Shocking. Let me tell you another story, something that woke me up. Great movie. Another good movie that I recommend. I have four movies that I recommend are must-sees without giving a blanket a recommendation to the people behind the movies or everything that's in the movies, is The Veteran 2011 with Toby Kebbell, and JFK, Oliver Stone's JFK, and then there's Jeremy Renner's Kill the Messenger, the Gary Webb story about the reporter from the San Jose Mercury News who uncovered the shocking story that the Central Intelligence Agency is the world's biggest drug trafficker.
Yeah.
Right.
That the Central Intelligence Agency funds itself by trafficking drugs into America, into the country. And as a result, no one believed Gary Webb, and he was eventually pushed out of the San Jose Mercury News, and a few years later, he got depressed and shot himself twice in the face. No lie, that's what they say to this very day, that Gary Webb killed himself by shooting himself twice in the face. Very happens all the time, right? So, and then the fourth movie is Spotlight, about police abuse in Boston, although I am convinced that it's a bit of a propaganda psyop to make us believe journalists really do their job, which they don't. But how is it, in speaking of Jeremy Renner's great movie, Kill the Messenger, and the Gary Webb story, it's now pretty solid. As a matter of fact, another book I like to recommend. Another book, I haven't recommended any books yet. A book I like to recommend is Compromised by Terry Kent Reid.
Okay.
On the how it was the Central Intelligence Agency built the Bush and Clinton dynasties on a mountain of cocaine, running it through Mena, Arkansas.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, and you brought it up. Yeah, they were buddies. Well, they admit that now. They admit that they're like family member to each other.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is an impeccable source. The guy was an intelligence analyst for the Air Force during Vietnam, and then brought into the Central Intelligence Agency as a daredevil pilot. First-hand account of drug and weapons trafficking and the involvement of both the Bush and Clinton clans, and how it is that they are as powerful as they are, that we actually had people talking about a third Bush coming into the White House. Are you kidding me? So how is it that the Central Intelligence Agency is trafficking in narcotics and dumping heroin and cocaine on American streets? That's a crime that you would expect the Kremlin in the Cold War to do. We have no enemies that have done the crimes as vicious and as evil as our own institutions. Every time that is, as researchers, we find that every time that the FBI is involved in a crime of major proportion, actual proportion, they're first on the scene to cloud the evidence, to intimidate witnesses, or even to execute them, as they did in Florida of the friend of the Tsarnaev brothers, who was Ibrahim Todashev. Okay, so he was a friend of Tamerlan Tsarnaev, who was one of the so-called Boston Marathon bombers, right? So they tracked Ibrahim down in Florida and murdered him, executed him.
Right.
And that's common source. I actually have a clip from Rachel Maddow, MSNBC, talking about, admitting that, oh, gee whiz, well, what did the FBI do wrong here? You murdered a witness.
Yeah.
So that's what the FBI does. Glenn Greenwald has some great pieces. Mainstream guy, and writes for Salon.com and other mainstream sources. Great piece on how the FBI likes to thwart its own terror plots. That if you have three guys in a terrorist cell plotting some kind of mass destructive event, two of them work for the FBI. At the very least, we call that entrapment. Okay?
And that's what they did with that First World Trade Center, wasn't it?
That is exactly what they did with the First World Trade Center. The FBI had their own man in with the blind sheikh, Omar Abdel Rahman. Omar Abdel Rahman, the blind sheikh, was permitted to go and come at his leisure, completely watched by American government agencies, particularly the FBI. The FBI had an Egyptian intelligence operative, Ahmad Salem, on the inside, carefully watching. This is why I like this movie, The Veteran from 2011, Toby Kebbell. It is a sickening movie. And the basis of the movie is they grab this British his paratrooper, and they stick him into watching terrorists because they need an outsider, and his job isn't to bring the terrorists to justice. His job is to make sure the terrorists pull off a terrorist event so they can kick the war on terror into overdrive. And he doesn't even realize he's being used simply to make sure the terrorists are on time and on target. And that's exactly what the FBI did to Ahmad Salem. He was working with his FBI handlers and said, look, these guys are calling my bluff. The blind sheikh tells me I'm his bomb maker and he now wants the bomb. What should I do? The FBI replied to Salem, build the bomb. Salem was shocked. He felt like he was being set up. As a result, he started to record every single future correspondence with his FBI handler, and those tapes saved his life, because he would have got depressed too. And as a result, he built the bomb, and the FBI lost track of the terrorists, of the bomb, and Salem. And a short time later, the bomb went off in 1993 in the World Trade Center and killed like 11 people, and started the ball rolling towards this fanaticism over Islamic terror. And Andrew McCarthy, who wrote, Andrew C. McCarthy, willful blindness. The FBI was just too politically correct. It was willfully blind to the blind sheikh. Are you kidding me? The FBI babysat him. Andrew C. McCarthy, federal prosecutor in New York, Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic. Propaganda. Pure propaganda. The FBI knew what was going on the whole time. The same way that they put, what's his name? Fethullah Gulen, the Turkish pariah who has basically a massive enclave here in, I think it's Saylorsville in Pennsylvania, an entire enclave where he can do whatever he wants behind closed gates, train terrorists, whatever it is that he wants. Turkey wants him dead. He was brought here by the CIA, and he's carefully controlled.
Is that the place that Doug Hagman investigated? Do you listen to Joe Hagman's show?
He may have, but I don't listen too much anymore. As a matter of fact, I was the one guest that he had on was a guy by the name of Eric John Phelps, who happens to live down the street from me. Eric John Phelps is an impeccable source on the Jesuits, and he's also, I'm absolutely convinced, an incognito Jesuit. His purpose is to give up tremendous amounts of information and at the last minute misdirect people, get people locked onto Jesuit doctrines, and he is a self-avowed racist because, as part of the Hegelian dialectic, division, divide and conquer, he actually has on the original flyleaf of his book, Vatican Assassins, he's self-described as a white supremacist. He's toned it down to white separatist now, and he maintains that even to this day. That's because racism is a key factor in the Jesuit doctrine of divide and conquer. Listen, I'm open to Joe and Doug. I just would like to see them cover this a little bit more. This is the top of the pyramid. You name it, I can trace it back to Rome and the Vatican. The Illuminati, founded in 1776, May 1st, May Day, 1776, by Adam Weishaupt, who was a Jesuit. Started his Jesuit training at the tender age of 7 years old. And he also has a Jewish lineage because the Jesuits love to exploit and use the Jews, and they can throw that back out. Oh, see that? The Illuminati were really started by the Jews. No, he was absolutely a Jesuit, probably even a Jesuit priest, because he was teaching canon law, which are the precepts by which the Roman Catholic Church conducts itself politically at Jesuit Ingolstadt University in Bavaria, which is today Munich. Absolute hardcore Roman Catholic Jesuit stronghold there in Germany. Like we were talking about Kennedy, Lincoln, the founding of the nation. What's the White House? You know what the White House is named after? Named after a Jesuit by the name of Andrew White. George Washington, his best friend was Leonard Neal, a Jesuit priest. George Washington, I always forget this. George Washington...
He was supposed to have a deathbed conversion to Catholicism, according to what I've seen before, but...
Excellent. Oh, yes. Well, and that's at the bare minimum, is that a supposed conversion, although his friend Leonard Neal, he was very close with that Jesuit all of his life. He's kind of like built up into a myth on purpose. Starting as a teenager, he supposedly wrote the rules of civility and decent behavior. Oh, but what a brilliant prodigy as this young teenager, a young ethical boy, is destined to become the father of a nation. Turns out he copied it from a book of etiquette by French Jesuits and written in 1595. So, as a matter of fact, he also had in his home a painting, a mural of the Virgin Mary. So, very, very open. Guy Fawkes, everybody, hey, you want to fight the machine, you put on a Guy Fawkes mask. Guy Fawkes was a Jesuit assassin. Remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgotten. Why? Because it was a plot by Jesuit assassins to murder Protestant King James I, the commissioner of the King James Bible, to pack the House of Lords with barrels of gunpowder and blow up the House of Lords and murder as many Protestant Englishmen as possible in the hopes of eventually getting King James. And so Guy Fawkes was the guy left holding the bag, guarding the door left into the basement there at the House of Lords. They were captured. The Jesuit provincial was captured, implicated, and hung. And in order to fight the machine, now the kids put on a visage of a Jesuit assassin who represents the machine. So to fight the machine, you're going to put on the face of the machine.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who Guy Fawkes was or what he did. The fact that he was a Jesuit assassin. The Jesuits have been kicked out of every single country they've been in because they're assassins who overturn governments. If your government isn't completely and thoroughly, totally loyal to the papacy, it is in definite threat. And today we absolutely have a complete control. We just had an election. In the election, you had Donald Trump, who was supposedly just a devout Protestant, devout Protestant, who was trained 2 years by the Jesuits at Fordham, and then he left Fordham, and probably was told to leave Fordham, and went to the University of Pennsylvania, where the Jesuits control incognito, to get his secular degree. Is that a fluke? Probably not, because his son Eric, who helped run his campaign, got his degree from Jesuit Georgetown. As a matter of fact, he's on the Georgetown School of Business. Mike Pence, born and raised very devout Roman Catholic, used to call himself evangelical Catholic, but now has rebranded himself to just Christian and even Protestant. There were no dramatic changes other than Mike Pence subtly rebranding himself. Hillary Clinton, part of the Clinton cocaine CIA crime family, which was founded by the CIA. The CIA is so completely owned and run by Jesuit-trained Catholics, it's euphemistically called Catholics in Action, or the Catholic Intelligence Agency. She knew all the kings of the world drunk from the cup of the great harlots' fornications. They both knew to pick strong Roman Catholics for their vice presidential running mate in order to please the great harlots of Babylon. Hillary Clinton picked Tim Kaine, devout Roman Catholic. Tim Kaine, trained by the Jesuits in both high school and college, and actually went on a mission trip with the Jesuits. Tim Kaine, former, I think he's still senator of Virginia, vowed one of the first things he'd do is legalize as many illegal immigrants as he possibly could. Why? Because the vast majority of them are Hispanic Roman Catholics. And so either way, Rome wins the so-called election, quote-unquote election. And you have guys like Donald Trump, who I'm convinced is an absolute clown and a puppet, saying, and he got into office by saying, I'm going to close the border. What is he going to do? He's going to build a Great Wall of China. And that's exactly what it's going to take. It's not even close to being a proper solution to closing the border, a ridiculous, ludicrous idea of using money that we don't have to build a great wall. Ludicrous. What you use is technology and manpower. Clearly shows he's not serious about closing the border. And I've warned people, look, you think that this guy is going to do what he says. He's going to close the border as fast as Barack Obama closed Guantanamo Bay. Guantanamo Bay is there to create terrorists. And it's in Cuba. How is it that the CIA is capable of slaughtering a sitting president in broad daylight, and yet they can't knock out an old tin dictator, Fidel Castro? That's because Fidel Castro is a Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic. The entire Castro family. They put on a big show about how he's an atheist, communist, left the church. No. He's their boy, always was their boy. 3 different Jesuit institutions Fidel was trained in. He was never knocked out because the papacy never wanted him knocked out. As a matter of fact, the papacy is that Bay of Pigs was nothing more than a Jesuit-fabricated, unbelievable treason. What they do, they did it in Hungary, they did it in Czechoslovakia, and they did it in Cuba, is the CIA, filled with traitors, tricks the patriots of those communist-controlled countries to act in rebellion and then pull their hands back and never deliver the help that they promised they would deliver, and allows the iron fist of the communist government to crush them. They did it not once, not twice, 3 different times, and that's in my book, Secret History. They did it in Hungary, they did it in Czechoslovakia, and they did it at the Bay of Pigs. They pulled the rug out from underneath brave patriots trying to rebel against communist tyranny on purpose. And no one that I am aware of has ever fingered the CIA as the impetus behind these unbelievable treasons. And instead they hung it on Kennedy, when it was actually guys like McGeorge Bundy, Skull and Bones Yale, McGeorge Bundy, who made sure that those brave Cuban patriots never got the air cover that they were supposed to have.
Well, Johnny, we've been going about an hour. We got to wrap it up. And I will say to our audience, what you heard tonight was, if you're hearing any of this for the first time, I mean, it's heavy, you're probably not believing it, but I understand one of the reasons that this book, at least that we have your first book here, Illuminati Unmasked, is so big, is that you have all this documented, right? I mean, so what you're saying, if you say it in this book, you've got to footnote it somewhere where you've got that from. Is that
not
correct?
Just documented, Matt, but mainstream sources. It's very, very important to me that I don't pull up somebody's blog or somebody's opinion. These are New York Times, Washington Post, Salon.com, mainstream sources that each one of them, if you get one of the electronic versions, the Kindle version, they're actual hyperlinks. If that hyperlink still exists, all you got to do is click on it and trace it for yourself. I encourage people, do your own research.
So exactly.
Amen.
So if one thing I think that you and I can agree on, and Joe here and in our viewing audience, is a lot of this stuff in the news, it doesn't make sense, whether it's, we go back to the Kennedy assassination, or how somebody out of nowhere became president with no background, with birth certificate in question, social security number in question, can run basically unopposed, can get in, and everything else you talked about in the show. The story that we're getting told is not the truth. And so it's our job to find out what the truth is. And you've done some research here, and you've documented it, and so I definitely suggest people. We have not read this book yet.
You can tell by just flipping through pages.
Yeah.
There's, you have the, the links, everywhere.
Yeah. So we're gonna
your information.
We're gonna read it. We're gonna do some research here, and I suggest that our viewing audience does it too. So they can either go to Amazon or they can go to your site. Correct?
Yeah, and go directly to Amazon, or you can go to johnnycirucci.com, JOHNNY CIRUCCI. And there's links. There's a banner across the top with buttons for both books. You can click on the links, but eventually you just get it from Amazon. And really, that's the question, guys. How is it possible that America's institutions are our own worst enemies, conducting unbelievable treason, trafficking drugs, murdering presidents, slipping LSD to unsuspecting American citizens as mind control experiments? Our own institutions, that's because they don't answer to us, they answer to Rome. The OSS, founded by Knight of Malta, devout Roman Catholic William Donovan, run today by Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic John Brennan. The FBI, founded by devout Roman Catholic Charles Joseph Bonaparte, run today by devout Roman Catholic James Comey, who says that Hillary can use a private email server to conduct her Secretary of State business. No big deal. Our institutions, there's not a coincidence that the NSA has a home in Maryland, the Catholic colony of Lord Baltimore, George's Calvert. It's that all of our major institutions don't answer to us. We are a controlled, captured operation, and the one who controls us is the great harlot of Babylon, who good Christians have always known was the fourth and final beast, as it says in Daniel 2 and 7, Revelation 9, 11. 13, 17, 18, 19, 20. We've always known that, and guess what? Jesuits have rewritten our Christian doctrines, the pre-tribulation rapture, dispensationalism, a future role for a prophetic role for Israel, all written by Jesuits to cloud our judgment and distract us from Rome being the fourth and final beast, which she always was, which Martin Luther knew she was 500 years ago this coming November 1st.
Right. And again, to our viewing audience, we're not anti-Catholic. Just as we're talking about these American institutions and things that our government do, that doesn't mean we're anti-American. We're not against American people. It's the people that are in power that have seized control, and I think that's what Johnny's shedding the light on here, and to wake people up. Definitely, you have a YouTube channel as well?
Yes, sir. Johnny Cirucci on YouTube. The actual address is the Johnny Cirucci, and I want to echo your sentiments there, Matt. Look, we good American Roman Catholics. Your own leadership hates you. Your own leadership is using you, and your own leadership wants you to be enslaved. This is not a battle against Roman Catholics. There's two separate issues. There's the gentle debate that Protestant Christians have with Catholics about doctrine and about important things like salvation and baptism and purgatory and other issues. And then there's the other issue of who is pulling the strings, who is at the top of the pyramid, who is behind the curtain. And guys, this is why this information is more important than almost any other topic that's out there, because there's nothing that hits each and every one of us, particularly in America, harder than who really controls. Why are our lives so hard? Why is the American dollar worth 5 cents what it was in 1913? Why is it that we would have over 15 years of the war on terror, and you have to hold your arms up like a prisoner of war and get scanned by a naked body scanner even today through an airport? It's much worse now than it ever was. We have local law enforcement driving my MRAPs down the street. We live in a police. How is that even possible? Because our own institutions hate us. They don't answer to us. They answer to a higher malignant authority, and that's Rome. And that's what's in either of those two books, with lots of citations.
Well, great. Everybody check those out. Go to Johnny's YouTube page. Make sure you become a subscriber. Also become a subscriber to the Prophecy Brothers YouTube page. Now, we're primarily, a lot of you watch us on the public access show, which is great. We're reaching some audience there that necessarily not going to search this information out on the internet and may discover this on TV, but we also need your subscribers as well. That helps spread the word. Helps. We've been having some really great guests on here, like Johnny Cirucci, and we've had some other people on recently. Help get their message out. Subscribe to our channel. It helps get our videos up into search. So with that, thank you for watching another episode of the Prophecy Brothers. Thank you, Johnny, for joining us. And definitely, we're going to read your book, check it out, and hopefully we'll be able to, maybe we'll have you on again, if that's okay. We'll talk to you again.
I absolutely, I look forward to that. I will send you guys digital copies of my book so that it's easier for you to click on those links. And as you get through, take notes, write down questions, and I'll be very, very excited to come back.
Great. Well, thank you. All right, till next time, we'll see you all then.
There we go.
Thanks for watching another exciting episode of the Prophecy Brothers.